Adjusting your air pressure is an important part of dialing in the handling of your autocross car. It's a free mod that can be done by any car in any category and any class. And it can shave seconds off your times. Setting your air pressure can be a little confusing when you first start out, because finding the perfect air pressure depends on many different factors. The width, aspect ratio, and tread wear rating of your tires, your suspension and camber settings, and the weight of your car all have an influence on your ideal air pressure setting. This video covers the common methods for dialing in your ideal air pressure and provides tips for setting and maintaining air pressure in your tires at autocross events. Some SCCA categories allow for race tires, while others require tires to have a minimum tread wear rating of 200. I'm in Cam T and I use 200 tread wear tires, but I instruct a lot of novices who use their daily driving tires. I don't have personal experience autocrossing on race tires, so the information in this video is geared toward 200 tread wear and daily driving tires. The more autocross events you attend, the more you'll see people checking and adjusting their air pressure. If you plan on doing a lot of events, it's a good idea to purchase an accurate air pressure gauge that allows you to bleed air out of your tires prior to your runs, and a portable air pump so you can add air to your tires before you drive home. There are low-tech and high-tech methods for determining the best air pressure for your setup. You can use chalk, an infrared pyrometer, or a probe pyrometer. If you look at the edge of this tread block, you can see a clear line that defines where the tire is touching the pavement. And you can see how much of the tread isn't being used. Your goal is to use as much of the tire tread as possible everywhere on course. The right air pressure setting will allow you to get every last bit of grip out of your tires. Here's how you can use chalk or a pyrometer to dial in your air pressure setting. I always make adjustments 1 PSI at a time. The most common method for dialing in air pressure is to use chalk. Using chalk is crude but effective. Mark the outer edge of the tread and the sidewall with chalk in 3 places on the tire. After your autocross run, check to see how much of the chalk mark is left. If you still have chalk on the tread, you should lower the air pressure in that tire. If the chalk has come off the sidewall, it means the tire is rolling over. Essentially, the sidewall is folding because the tire is underinflated. That's not good for handling. You need to raise the air pressure in that tire. If the chalk is right at the edge of the tread, your air pressure setting is good. For a more scientific method, many people use pyrometers. A pyrometer is used to measure the temperature of your tires across the tread after an autocross run. Infrared pyrometers measure the surface temperature of the tires. Probe pyrometers measure just under the surface of the tire. A probe pyrometer gives a more accurate reading of tire temperature. With either pyrometer, you want to check the temperature of the inner edge, the center, and the outer edge of the tread. By inner and outer edge, I mean about 1 to 1.5 inches from the sidewall. Your goal is to get those 3 temperatures to be as close as possible, ideally within 10 degrees of one another. If your tire is hotter in the center, it is overinflated, and you should lower the air pressure. If your tire is hotter on the edges, it is underinflated, and you should raise the air pressure. That sounds pretty straightforward, but there's a catch. If your car doesn't have a lot of negative camber, the outer edge will be hotter than the center and the inner edge. If your car has too much negative camber, your inner edge will be hotter than the center and the outer edge. That can be really helpful when you're determining the proper camber setting for your car, but it can make it more difficult to dial in your air pressure by measuring the temperatures across the tread. There is no one PSI-fits-all air pressure setting for our Mustangs. There are so many different tire sizes available, different suspension setups, and different makes and models of tires that each one of our cars will respond a little differently to air pressure settings. It's a process of trial and error. But here are some helpful tips. Fox body Mustangs and 94 to 04 V6 Mustangs came from the factory with high-profile tires. If you have a tall sidewall, you should raise your air pressure when you autocross. Raising air pressure in a tire with a tall sidewall will prevent the sidewall from rolling over when cornering. A general rule of thumb is to raise the pressure by about 5 psi from your normal street setting. The maximum pressure of your tire is listed on the sidewall. Do not exceed the maximum tire pressure, and remember to allow for the pressure to go up as the tire gets hotter. Lower profile tires, especially tires designed for autocross, often have a stiffer sidewall and can be run with lower air pressure than you would use on the street. Always check with your tire manufacturer for the lowest recommended air pressure for your tires. Going higher than the maximum air pressure or lower than the minimum air pressure can cause the tire to fail. Tire pressure will increase during your first few runs as the tires get hot. 2 to 4 psi is common. I've had tires go up as much as 6 psi on a run. You should check and set your air pressure after each run, making adjustments based on the chalk, the pyrometer readings, or how the car feels on course. It sounds hard to believe, but 1 psi higher or lower does make a difference. The best environment to dial in your air pressure settings is at a test and tune, where you'll get many more runs than you will at a points event. But it can also be done while you're competing. Chalk and pyrometers are very helpful, especially when you're just starting out. But you can also find your ideal air pressure setting by reading the tires after your runs. The wear line on the outer edge of this tire is high on the shoulder. If your tire looks like this after your first run, lower the air pressure 1 psi on each subsequent run until the wear line moves down to the very edge of the tread. It should look like this. You're getting much more grip out of the tire at the lower air pressure setting. The process of incrementally lowering your air pressure on every run allows you to feel the difference each adjustment makes as you dial in your ideal air pressure setting. But how low should you go? Stop taking pressure out of the tire when the sidewall starts to roll over, or the level of grip stops improving, or you reach the manufacturer's minimum recommended air pressure setting, whichever comes first. If the sidewall rolls over or the handling gets worse, raise the pressure to fix the issue. Depending on how your car is set up, your air pressure settings might be the same in the front tires and the rear tires, higher in the front tires than the rear tires, or higher in the rear tires than the front tires. But on our Mustangs, the difference between the front and rear settings is usually within 2 psi. Finally, in addition to checking chalk, taking temperatures, and reading the tires, try to find an experienced autocrosser who drives a similar car with a similar setup and ask them what air pressure settings they use. Here's what I tell people when they ask me. I run 26 psi all around on my neutral handling IRS swapped New Edge Mustangs with 315 tires front and rear. I normally do my first run at 29 or 30 psi so I can get some heat in the tires, then I drop down to 26 psi for my remaining runs. Occasionally, I'll go down to 25 psi all around on my last run, but that doesn't always net a faster time. Most of the Mustang autocrossers I know with 275 and 315 200 treadwear tires run somewhere between 25 and 29 psi. Most of the Mustangs I see using 275 and narrower daily driving tires run somewhere between 30 and 35 psi. Finding the ideal air pressure setting for your autocross Mustang takes patience and practice, but getting it right will shave seconds off your runs, and that will put the pressure on your competition.